Hello and welcome to Thought for the Day from St Peter's Bexhill. We're on to part 15 of our stories from the Bible, a very famous one this time. It still raises some interesting issues, so see what you think. It's Daniel and the lions. Daniel missed his home in Jerusalem, but he wanted to please God wherever he was. So he worked hard at the jobs he was given, so hard that he became one of the king's own helpers. But he never forgot about God or failed to pray to him morning, noon and night. Some of the king's men were jealous of Daniel. They wanted his job for themselves. So they talked the king into making a new law, a law which said no one, but no one is allowed to pray to anyone but the king himself. "We've got Daniel now," his enemies laughed. And so they had. For the very next morning, Daniel knelt by his window, bowed his head and prayed, not to the king, but to God. "Thank you for taking care of us in this faraway land," he prayed. "Forgive us and please take us back to our own land soon." Daniel's enemies were watching, and before he had even opened his eyes, they grabbed him and dragged him in front of the king. The king was sad, very sad, because he liked Daniel, but he could not break his own law. "Daniel must be punished," he sighed. "Throw him into the lion pit." But even as the king gave the order, he whispered a prayer that no one could hear, a prayer to Daniel's God, that somehow Daniel might be saved. The pit was dark. The pit was deep. The lions covered its floor like a shaggy, growling carpet. They leaped to their feet in a second when Daniel landed among them. They licked their lips, they showed their teeth, their eyes shone bright and fierce. They opened their mouths and moved towards their dinner. And then they stopped. "Shoo! Scat! Go away!" shouted a voice right behind Daniel. The lions' mouths snapped shut, their tails drooped, and they whimpered away to the corners of the cave. Slowly Daniel turned round and looked up into the face of an enormous angel. "Nothing to worry about now," the angel smiled. "God sent me to watch over you. Why don't you get some sleep?" The next morning, the king cheered when he discovered that Daniel was still alive. "Pull Daniel out," he ordered his men. "And while you're at it, take the men who talked me into that silly law and dump them into the pit instead." The king put his arm around Daniel and walked him back to the palace. Meanwhile, Daniel's enemies cried for help, and the lions enjoyed their breakfast. Amen.